The fog that remembered. The fog bank appeared at mile marker 312 on I-90 through Montana, and when I drove into it, I started experiencing memories that weren't mine. Memories of dying, over and over, in this exact spot. My name is Daniel Reeves, 46 years old, independent operator hauling timber from Missoula to Billings. The fog wasn't unusual for Montana. Thick, low-hanging, reducing visibility to maybe 30 feet. Standard mountain weather. I slowed to 45 miles per hour, turned on my flashers, and continued driving. That's when the first memory hit me. I was driving a different truck, an older Kenworth. The year was 1998. I could feel it, know it, the way you know things in dreams. I was coming around a curve too fast. The fog was thick. Suddenly there were brake lights, a stopped vehicle. I slammed my brakes. Too late. The impact was tremendous, metal screaming, glass shattering, my chest hitting the steering wheel, ribs cracking, puncturing my lung. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move, blood filling my throat. And then nothing. Death. Quick. Brutal. I snapped back to the present, my truck, my hands on the wheel, my heart hammering. That wasn't my memory. I'd never driven a Kenworth, never been in a fatal accident, but I'd just experienced it, felt it, died in it. The fog pressed closer. Another memory slammed into me. Different truck. International ProStar, 2007, I was hauling cattle. The fog was impossibly thick, I couldn't see anything. Drove blind, trusting the road would stay straight. It didn't. There was construction I didn't see. Barriers I couldn't avoid. I crashed through them, my truck went airborne. Brief weightlessness, then impact. Rolling, the cattle trailer tearing open, animals screaming, my body breaking with each roll. 5 complete rotations. When the truck stopped, I was upside down, crushed, bleeding internally. It took 11 minutes to die. I counted every second, back to the present, gasping, shaking. These weren't hallucinations, they were too detailed, too specific, too real. I was experiencing actual memories, deaths that had happened in this fog on this highway. I tried to turn around, find an exit, get out of the fog. But the road had changed. There were no exits, no turnoffs, just highway extending endlessly in both directions, and the fog consuming everything. Third memory, 2015. I was a woman, mid-30s, driving a Volvo VNL. The fog came out of nowhere. One moment clear road, next moment complete whiteout. I panicked, swerved, hit black ice. The truck jackknifed, spun across 3 lanes. A semi hit me broadside, driver's side. The impact was instantaneous. My body didn't have time to register pain, just existence, then non-existence, the fastest death, but somehow the most terrifying. I was crying. Real tears running down my face. These people, these drivers, they'd all died here, in this fog, and somehow their deaths were recorded, preserved, and I was experiencing them, living through their final moments. The fog thickened, became solid. I could barely see my own hood, and the memories came faster. 1983. Heart attack, slumped over the wheel. Truck drifted into oncoming traffic. Head-on collision. Both drivers dead. 1976, brake failure, couldn't slow down. Runaway truck. Went off a cliff that shouldn't exist on this highway. 200-foot drop. 6 seconds of falling. Then impact. 2012. Fell asleep. Just for a moment. Woke up in the wrong lane. Correction too hard. Overcorrected, rolled the truck, ejected through the windshield, landed in the road, run over by following traffic. Dead before the second vehicle hit. Each death was complete, total. I didn't just see them, I lived them, felt every impact. Every moment of pain, every final thought. The fog wasn't just showing me memories, it was making me experience them, forcing me to die dozens of deaths. I tried to stop my truck, tried to pull over, but there was no shoulder anymore, just fog, solid fog. My tires were driving on something, but it wasn't asphalt. It was softer, more yielding, like I was driving on the fog itself. More memories flooded in, hundreds of them, thousands, every death that had ever occurred in fog on this highway. Spanning decades, spanning back to when this road was first built. I experienced them all simultaneously, an avalanche of dying, crushing my consciousness under the weight of collective trauma. I understood then what the fog was. It wasn't weather. It was a recording medium, a storage device for final moments. Every time someone died in fog, their last memories imprinted on the moisture, got absorbed into the water molecules, and those molecules stayed here, circulating, forming fog banks, collecting more deaths, becoming a dense archive of trauma that forced anyone who entered to experience everything it contained. The fog was a graveyard of memories, and I was drowning in it. I don't know how long I drove. Time stopped meaning anything when you're dying constantly, experiencing death after death after death. My sense of self was fragmenting. I couldn't remember who I was. Daniel Reeves became just one more dead driver among thousands. My identity dissolved into the collective dying. Then something changed. A new memory, but not a death. A survival. A woman. Last week, she'd entered this fog, experienced the deaths like I was experiencing them, but she'd fought back, refused to let the memories consume her. She'd started broadcasting her own memories into the fog. Strong memories. Life memories, births she'd witnessed, weddings she'd attended, moments of joy and love and survival. She'd flooded the fog with life instead of death. And slowly the death memories weakened, got diluted, gave her space to think, to navigate, to escape. I latched onto that memory, used it as a blueprint, started pushing back against the fog, started broadcasting my own life, my daughter's birth, holding her for the first time, her tiny hand wrapped around my finger. The overwhelming love, my wedding day, seeing my wife at the altar, the way her eyes sparkled. The moment I knew I'd found my person, my father teaching me to drive, his patience, his pride when I got my CDL. The way he'd clapped my shoulder and said, "You're going to be great at this." The fog resisted, pushed back with more death, more trauma, more dying. But I kept broadcasting, kept flooding it with life, with moments that mattered, with reasons I'd survived this long, with everything that made me Daniel Reeves and not just another corpse memory in the fog. Slowly, impossibly slowly, the death memories receded. The fog thinned. I could see further. 10 feet, 20 feet, 50 feet. And ahead, finally, I saw it. The edge of the fog bank, the clear road beyond. I accelerated, drove hard toward the light. The fog made one last attempt, threw everything at me, every death simultaneously. Thousands of final moments crushing down, trying to add me to the collection, trying to make me just another memory for the next driver to experience. But I held on to myself, held on to my life, and broke through. Clear air, sunshine, normal highway. I pulled onto the shoulder and vomited, shaking, sobbing, but alive, still myself, still Daniel Reeves. I grabbed my phone, called 911. "There's something wrong with I-90 at mile marker 312. Some kind of fog. It's dangerous. You need to close that section." "Sir, can you describe the danger?" How could I? "It causes hallucinations, disorientation. Drivers could crash. Please, you need to close it." They said they'd send someone to investigate. But when I checked the news later, there was nothing. No road closure, no investigation, just silence. I drove that route again 2 weeks later. Had to. It was my regular haul. When I approached mile marker 312, there was no fog. Clear conditions, perfect visibility. I drove through without incident. But I felt them. The memories. Still there, waiting in the moisture in the air, in the clouds above, in the morning dew on the grass. All those deaths, recorded, preserved, waiting for the right conditions to manifest again, waiting for the next fog bank to form, waiting for the next driver to enter and experience the archive of dying. I drive that route once a week now. Every time I approach mile marker 312, I broadcast my life memories, proactively, flooding the area with life before the fog can form. I don't know if it helps. Don't know if I'm preventing deaths or just warding off the fog for myself. But I keep doing it. Keep broadcasting. Because I've experienced enough deaths for one lifetime. I've died thousands of times in that fog, and I'm not ready to add my real death to the collection. Not yet. Not while I still have life memories to broadcast. Not while I can still remember my daughter's laugh, my wife's smile, my father's pride. As long as I remember those things, the fog can't take me. Can't add me to its archive. Can't make me just another memory of dying on I-90 at mile marker 312. I'm still alive. Still driving. Still fighting the fog with everything I've lived. And I'll keep fighting. Because the alternative is becoming part of the fog forever. Just another death memory waiting to overwhelm the next driver who enters. And I won't do that to someone else. Won't force another person to experience my dying. I'll keep my death to myself and keep flooding that stretch of highway with life. For as long as I can. For as long as I have memories to broadcast. For as long as I'm Daniel Reeves and not just another ghost in the fog. Story 2. The delivery address that didn't exist. The GPS directed me to 4747 Industrial Boulevard in Des Moines, Iowa. But when I arrived, there was no building, just empty lot. Yet my manifest insisted I'd delivered there successfully, 3 times. Yesterday, last week, and last month. Deliveries I didn't remember making. My name is Lisa Chang, 39 years old, driving LTL freight for XPO Logistics. The delivery was routine, industrial equipment for a manufacturing facility. Standard drop-off. But when I pulled up to the address, there was nothing. Just an empty lot, overgrown grass, cracked pavement, no building, no sign a building had ever been there. I checked my paperwork. 4747 Industrial Boulevard, clear as day. I checked my GPS. I was at the right location, but there was no building. I called dispatch. Hey, I'm at 4747 Industrial Boulevard. There's no facility here. Are you sure this address is correct? Lisa, you've been there 3 times already. Same address. Why are you calling? I've never been here before. Your logs show you delivered there yesterday, 1700 hours. Signed delivery confirmation, customer signature. Everything processed normally. I wasn't here yesterday. I was in Kansas City yesterday. Your GPS tracking shows you in Des Moines, at that address for 43 minutes, then you left. I felt cold. That's impossible. I remember Kansas City. I delivered to a warehouse on 5th Street. I remember the dock supervisor. We talked about his daughter's soccer team. Lisa, there's no delivery to Kansas City in your logs for yesterday. Just Des Moines, 4747 Industrial Boulevard. I checked my phone, my personal GPS history. It showed the same thing. I'd been in Des Moines yesterday, at this address, for 43 minutes, but I had no memory of it. No memory of driving here. No memory of unloading. No memory of getting a signature, nothing. I got out of my truck, walked the empty lot, looking for any sign of a building, foundation, utilities, anything. There was nothing, just dirt and grass. The lot looked like it had been empty for years. Then I found the signatures, in my delivery logbook, 3 of them. Same address, different dates, all signed J. Morrison, Receiving Manager. The signatures were identical, too identical, like they'd been photocopied. I examined them closer. The ink was wrong, too fresh. These signatures claimed to be from yesterday, last week, and last month. But they all looked like they'd been written today. Same ink consistency, same pressure, same everything. Someone, Or something was forging my delivery confirmations, making it look like I'd made deliveries to a non-existent address, creating false memories in my GPS logs, false records in my company system. But why? And how? I walked the perimeter of the lot. That's when I noticed the seam, a thin line in the air, like reality had been cut and pasted back together imperfectly. The line ran vertically about 6 feet high, extending the length of the lot. I reached out to touch it. My hand passed through, and suddenly I could see the building. It was there. It had always been there, a massive industrial facility. 3 stories, modern construction, loading docks, trucks parked outside, workers moving around. But it existed behind the seam. In a different layer of reality, I was seeing 2 versions of the same location simultaneously. One where the lot was empty, one where a building existed, and the seam was the boundary between them. I stepped through the seam, fully, into the version of reality where the building existed. The transition was seamless. One moment I was standing in an empty lot, next moment I was standing in front of a functioning facility. A man approached me, 40s, clipboard. "You the XPO driver? You're late." I couldn't see the building. Yeah, that happens sometimes. Reality shift hasn't stabilized yet. Some people can see us, some can't. Depends on which version of Des Moines you're anchored to. "What are you talking about?" He sighed. "This facility exists in a probability overlay. We're testing whether we can operate a business in a fluctuating reality state. Sometimes we're here, sometimes we're not. But we're always accepting deliveries. That's the experiment. Can a non-existent company conduct real business? That's insane. That's quantum logistics. Come on, let's get you unloaded. You've got a schedule to keep." He led me to a loading dock. Workers helped unload my freight. Normal process, normal procedures, everything exactly as it should be, except the entire facility kept flickering, phasing in and out of existence. One moment solid, next moment translucent, then back again. "What happens if you're not here when I need to leave?" I asked. "You'll find yourself standing in an empty lot. No memory of delivering. No memory of us. Your GPS and logs will show you completed the delivery, but you won't remember it. That's how it works. The delivery happens in a probability state that collapses after you leave. The records remain. The memories don't. You're saying I've been here 3 times and don't remember any of them?" "Correct. Each time the facility was in a different probability state. You delivered, got your signature, left. Then the state collapsed and took your memories with it. Only the paperwork survives, because paperwork exists in baseline reality. Memories exist in consciousness, and consciousness is anchored to whichever reality state you're in when you form the memory. This violates every law of physics. No, it exploits loopholes in physics. Quantum superposition allows a location to exist in multiple states until observed. We found a way to maintain superposition even after observation. The building is both here and not here, existing and non-existent, real and unreal. Simultaneously, they finished unloading. The man, J. Morrison, his name tag said, handed me a tablet. "Sign here." I signed. Electronic signature, time-stamped, documented, official. "What happens to the freight?" I asked. "We use it, manufacture products, sell them, ship them to customers, all while existing in a probability overlay. Our products exist in baseline reality even though we don't. It's quite profitable. No property taxes when you don't technically exist. Someone's going to catch on, investigate. They already have, 3 times. Each time the investigators arrived, we were in the non-existent state. They found nothing. Wrote reports saying this facility is a clerical error, that the address doesn't exist, that all deliveries must be going elsewhere and being mislabeled. Their reports exist in baseline reality. We exist in probability space. Never the twain shall meet. He walked me back to my truck. You'll forget this conversation in about 5 minutes. Once you leave the probability overlay, you'll be back in baseline reality where this building doesn't exist, but your logs will show a successful delivery. Your company will pay you for the trip and we'll have our freight. Everybody wins. Except I lose my memory. You lose this memory, but you gain the experience in your subconscious. Part of you will remember. That's why you notice the seam this time. Your subconscious has been here before, knows something's wrong. It's trying to warn your conscious mind. Eventually, you might retain full memory, become one of the few people who can consciously navigate probability overlays. It's rare but possible. I climbed into my truck, started the engine, looked back at the facility. It was flickering faster now, phasing between existence and non-existence every few seconds. "Drive safe," Jay Morrison called. "We'll see you again in 3 weeks. Same delivery, same address, same forgetting." I drove away, crossed the seam. The building vanished. I was back in baseline reality. Empty lot behind me, no memory of... Wait, I remembered. This time I remembered. The building, the conversation, the probability overlay, all of it. My subconscious had finally broken through. I was retaining memory across reality states. I pulled over, wrote down everything, documented it before I could forget. Every detail, every word, every impossible thing I'd witnessed. Then I called dispatch. "I need to report something about the delivery at 4747 Industrial Boulevard." "You completed it, right? Logs show successful delivery." "Yeah, but there's something wrong with that address, something impossible." "Lisa, are you feeling okay? Do you need to take a break?" "I'm fine. That facility exists in a quantum superposition state. It's there and not there simultaneously. They're exploiting probability physics to avoid taxes and regulations." Silence on the line. Then, "Lisa, I'm scheduling you for a mandatory wellness check. You've been driving too much. You need rest." "I'm not crazy. I have notes, documentation. I can prove..." "Take 2 days off, paid. See the company doctor. Then we'll talk about your route schedule." They didn't believe me. Of course they didn't. How could they? They'd never crossed the seam, never seen the probability overlay. They existed purely in baseline reality where 4747 Industrial Boulevard was just an empty lot. But I'd seen behind the seam, seen what existed in probability space, and I couldn't unsee it. I drove home, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. How many other addresses like that existed? How many businesses were operating in probability overlays? How much of our economy existed in reality states we couldn't perceive? I started researching, found 14 other addresses in my delivery history that matched the pattern. Addresses I'd successfully delivered to according to my logs, but addresses I had no memory of, addresses that probably didn't exist in baseline reality. I started tracking them, documenting them, looking for the seams, and I found them. All over the country, hundreds of facilities existing in probability overlays, all conducting business, all accepting deliveries, all exploiting the boundary between real and unreal. An entire shadow economy, operating in quantum superposition, invisible to regulators, untaxed, unregulated, existing in the gaps between reality states. And I was one of the few people who could see it, could remember it, could navigate consciously between baseline reality and probability space. Jay Morrison was right. I'd become one of the rare ones, someone who could cross the seams and retain memory, someone who existed partially in both reality states. And now I couldn't stop seeing the seams. They were everywhere, every city I drove through, every highway I traveled. Reality was full of cuts, full of overlaps, full of places that existed and didn't exist simultaneously. I don't drive for XPO anymore. They fired me after the wellness check, said I was experiencing delusions, psychotic break, unsafe to operate commercial vehicles. But I still drive, independent now, hauling for the companies that exist in probability overlays, because they pay better, because they don't have to follow baseline reality's rules, because they exist in the spaces between real and unreal. I'm a quantum trucker now, delivering to addresses that don't exist, crossing seams that others can't perceive, operating in probability space where the rules are different. And I remember every delivery, every facility, every conversation with people who exist and don't exist simultaneously. I remember 4747 Industrial Boulevard, and the day I learned reality was more flexible than anyone admitted, the day I crossed the seam and never fully came back. Story 3, the company that employed ghosts. I got hired by Phantom Freight Services 3 months ago. Great pay, flexible hours, modern equipment. I should have questioned why they only interviewed me at night. Why all my dispatchers were voices on the phone, never faces. Why I never saw another driver at any terminal. My name is Raymond Walsh, 51 years old, 28 years in the industry. I'd been laid off from my previous carrier and was desperate for work. The job posting for Phantom Freight appeared on every job board simultaneously. Same description, same perfect conditions. It felt too good to be true, but I applied anyway. Got a call the same night. A woman's voice, professional but slightly hollow, like she was speaking from the bottom of a well. "Mr. Walsh, we'd like to offer you a position, starting immediately. Can you come to our Des Moines terminal tonight for orientation?" Tonight? It's 10 p.m. We operate primarily at night. All our drivers prefer night shifts. The roads are emptier, less traffic, more efficient. Made sense. I drove to the address she gave, industrial area. The terminal was massive, 50 bays, hundreds of trailers in the yard, all the lights on, but no people, no activity. Just empty buildings glowing in the darkness. I parked, walked to the office. The door opened before I could knock. The woman from the phone stood there, mid-40s, professional attire, pleasant smile. But something was wrong with her. She was too still, didn't breathe, didn't blink, stood perfectly motionless like a mannequin. "Mr. Walsh, welcome. Please come in." The office was normal. Desks, computers, filing cabinets, but no other people, just her. We sat down. She slid papers across the desk. Employment contract, benefits package, W-4 forms, all standard. "You'll be hauling general freight, regional routes, home every weekend. Starting pay is $3,500 per week." I blinked. 3,500? That's nearly double industry standard. We pay well because our drivers stay loyal. Low turnover. Most drivers work for us until they die. Strange phrasing. Until they die. Not until they retire, but the money was too good to question. I signed. She handed me keys to a truck, gave me my first load assignment. "Deliver this to Chicago, address is in the GPS. You'll meet the customer at 0300 hours. They only accept deliveries at night." I walked to my assigned truck. Brand new Freightliner. Spotless. Climbed in. The cab smelled wrong. Not new truck smell. Old, stale. Like it had been closed up for years, but the odometer showed only 3,000 miles. I started driving. The truck handled perfectly. Smooth, quiet, almost too quiet. I couldn't hear the engine, couldn't feel vibrations. It was like driving a ghost, floating down the highway with no physical connection to the road. My first delivery was to a warehouse in Chicago, industrial district. I arrived at 0300 exactly. Backed up to the dock, rang the bell. No answer. I waited. 10 minutes, 20. Then the dock door opened. By itself, no one visible, just the door rising. A voice called out from inside. "Leave it on the dock. We'll unload." I couldn't see anyone. just darkness inside the warehouse. But I could hear movement, footsteps, whispers, things being moved around. I unloaded 48 pallets of freight. Took me 2 hours. The entire time I felt watched, felt presences but never saw anyone. When I finished, the dock door closed by itself. A delivery confirmation appeared in my truck's computer. Signed warehouse manager. No name, just title. I drove away. Tried not to think about it. First night jitters. New company. New procedures. Probably just automated systems. Remote workers. Nothing supernatural. But every delivery was the same. Dark warehouses, invisible customers, automatic doors, signed confirmations from unnamed people, and that constant feeling of being watched by things I couldn't see. After a week, I tried to meet other drivers. Waited at the terminal during shift change. No one came. No one left. The yard was full of trucks, but I never saw drivers. Never saw anyone except the occasional dispatcher in the office. And they were all like the first woman. Too still, not breathing, not quite real. I called one of the phone numbers from my hire paperwork. A driver support line. A man answered. Voice hollow, distant. Phantom freight driver support. How can I help you? I have questions about the company, about the other drivers. I never see anyone. We value privacy. Drivers work independently, no interaction required. But don't you have driver meetings? Safety briefings? Company events? Mr. Walsh, you're being paid extremely well to drive trucks at night. Why? Do you need meetings? I want to know who I'm working with. You're working with Phantom Freight Services. That's all you need to know. What does Phantom mean? Why is the company called that? Silence. Long silence. Then, check your original employment contract. Section 12, subsection 4, paragraph 7. It explains everything. He hung up. I dug out my contract, found section 12. The paragraph was in tiny print, almost illegible. But I read it. Employee acknowledges that Phantom Freight Services operates in multiple ontological states simultaneously. Some employees exist in baseline physical reality. Some employees exist in post-corporeal reality. Some employees exist in transitional states between life and death. All employees are treated equally regardless of ontological status. Employment continues beyond physical termination unless employee specifically requests cessation. Post-corporeal reality. Beyond physical termination, they were saying some employees were dead, ghosts, and employment continued after death. I called the support line again. Different person answered. Woman's voice. Familiar. It took me a moment to place it. Then I realized it was my voice. Female version. Phantom Freight Driver Support. Who is this? I asked. Raymond Walsh, Post-Corporeal Division. I died 3 years ago. Heart attack. Mile marker 47 on I-80. But my employment contract continued. I'm still working, just in a different capacity. Dispatching instead of driving. It's actually better. No traffic, no weather, no physical strain. I can work forever without fatigue. You're me? A version of me that died? I'm a version of you from a different timeline. In my timeline, you died in 2020. Had a heart attack. But your contract specified employment beyond physical termination, so you kept working. Eventually transitioned to dispatching. That's what happens to all Phantom Freight drivers eventually. We die. We continue working. We become the post-corporeal staff, running the company, dispatching the living drivers, creating a seamless integration between the living and the dead. This is insane. I'm quitting. Check your contract, Section 18, Termination Clause. You can't quit until you fulfill your minimum commitment. And your minimum commitment is until death. After death, employment is optional. But before death, it's mandatory. You signed a contract that binds you until you die. Then you'll join us on the dispatch side. I checked Section 18. She was right. Minimum employment term. Duration of employee's natural life. Termination prior to death constitutes breach of contract and subjects employee to penalties including but not limited to garnishment of all past wages, seizure of assets, and mandatory continuation of employment in post-corporeal state with no option for cessation. I was trapped. If I quit, they'd take everything and force me to work after death anyway. If I continued, I'd work until I died, then be given the option to continue. Either way, I was bound to phantom freight. Why? I asked. Why does the company do this? Because dead labor is cheap. We don't need sleep, don't need food, don't need health care. We work continuously, forever. The living drivers are the expensive part, but they're necessary for physical tasks, driving trucks, handling freight, interacting with living customers. But management, dispatch, administration, all post-corporeal, all dead workers who continued their contracts. Who founded this company? Someone who died and didn't want to stop working. Who believed employment should transcend death. Who built a system where the dead could remain productive, stay relevant, keep contributing. It started as one man. 1947, he died, kept running his trucking company, hired drivers, they died, they kept working. 70 years later, we're one of the largest carriers in North America. Thousands of living drivers, tens of thousands of dead employees, all working together. Does anyone know? Does the government know? They know. They just don't care. We pay taxes, follow regulations, employ thousands. The fact that many employees are dead is irrelevant to the bureaucracy. As long as the paperwork is correct, ontological status doesn't matter. I drove for phantom freight for 3 more months. Every night, every delivery to dark warehouses managed by invisible workers, every paycheck deposited by automated systems managed by the dead. I tried to escape, tried to document everything, tried to expose the company, but who would believe me? A trucking company that employs ghosts? I sounded insane. Last week I felt the chest pain, sharp, radiating. I knew what it was. Heart attack, just like the other me. The one who died 3 years ago in her timeline. I pulled over, called 911, they arrived in time, saved me, I survived. But now I'm terrified. Because I didn't die, which means my mandatory employment continues. I'm still bound to phantom freight, still driving for them, still trapped in a contract I can't break until death. And I'm starting to think death might be better. At least then I'd have the option to quit, to stop working, to rest. But as long as I'm alive, I'm bound, driving every night, delivering to ghosts, working for a company that exists partially in the afterlife, waiting for the heart attack that will finally give me the option to terminate my employment, waiting to die so I can finally quit my job. Story 4. The scales that weighed guilt. Every trucker knows weigh stations measure your truck's weight. But the weigh station on Highway 287 in Texas measures something else, something heavier, something you can't unload. My name is James Ochoa, 43, years old, driving for Stevens Transport. I'd passed through this weigh station dozens of times without incident. Standard procedure. Pull onto the scale, wait for the green light, continue driving. Simple. This time was different. I pulled onto the scale. The sign lit up. Overweight. Report to inspection bay 4. I checked my paperwork. 42,000 pounds of cargo, 26,000 pound empty truck weight, 68,000 total, well under the 80,000 pound federal limit. I wasn't overweight. The scale was wrong. I pulled into bay 4. An officer approached. But something was wrong with him. His uniform was period incorrect, looked like highway patrol from the 1950s. And his face was wrong, too angular, eyes too large, proportions slightly off. Like someone had described a human to an artist who'd never seen one. Sir, you're operating an overloaded vehicle. We need to perform a detailed inspection. I'm not overloaded. My manifest shows 68,000 pounds. Your physical load is 68,000. Your guilt load is 234,000 pounds. You're drastically overweight. Guilt load? What are you talking about? He gestured to a different scale. Not a truck scale, something else. Ornate, made of brass and dark wood, ancient-looking, with strange symbols carved into its base. This scale measures the weight of unresolved guilt. Every person carries guilt, regrets, things they've done, things they failed to do. Usually it's light, manageable. But you, Mr. Ochoa, your guilt weighs 234,000 pounds. That's dangerous. You're at risk of collapse. This is ridiculous. You can't measure guilt. We've been measuring it since 1949. This weigh station was built specifically for that purpose. Physical weight we can calculate from paperwork, but guilt weight, that requires actual measurement. And you're critically overloaded. He pulled out a clipboard. We need to go through your guilt inventory. Identify what you're carrying. See if we can help you unload some of it. Otherwise, you're not safe to continue driving. The weight will eventually crush you. I'm not participating in this. Then you're not leaving. This weigh station has authority to detain vehicles carrying dangerous loads. Your guilt qualifies as dangerous. Sit down, Mr. Ochoa. We're going to go through your life. I didn't sit. I tried to leave, tried to get back in my truck, but my legs wouldn't move. Something was holding me. Not physically, it was the weight. I could feel it now, pressing down on my shoulders, my chest, my entire body. 234,000 pounds of guilt I'd been carrying without realizing it. My legs buckled. I collapsed. The officer caught me, helped me to a chair. Let's start with the big ones, he said. April 19th, 2007, your brother. What happened? I didn't want to talk about it, hadn't talked about it in 16 years. But the words came out anyway. Car accident, he was drunk, called me for a ride, I was tired, told him to call someone else, he drove himself, crashed, died. You feel responsible. I could have picked him up, could have saved him. I chose sleep over my brother's life. The officer made a note. Guilt weight from that incident. 47,000 pounds, it's one of your heaviest. You've been carrying it for 16 years. Letting it compound with interest. The longer guilt sits unresolved, the heavier it gets. You could have processed this, forgiven yourself, released it. Instead, you buried it, let it grow. Now it's crushing you. How do I release it? That's not for me to decide. Guilt release is personal, but awareness is the first step. You need to acknowledge what you're carrying, name it, understand it, then choose to forgive yourself. If you can do that, the weight drops immediately. He continued down the list. Every mistake, every regret, every moment of failure cataloged and weighed. The time I yelled at my daughter and made her cry. 8,000 pounds. The time I cheated on a test in college, 3,000 pounds. The time I saw a homeless man asking for food and drove past, 1,000 pounds. Every tiny guilt compounding over years into unbearable weight. By the time we finished, I was crying. The weight was visible now, tangible. I could see it piled around me, translucent but real. Stacks of guilt pressing down. How do people survive with this much guilt? I asked. Most people don't carry this much. They process it, release it, forgive themselves, but some people like you, they hold on to everything, never forgive, never release. Just accumulate more and more weight until it becomes dangerous. What happens if I don't unload? Eventually you collapse completely. The guilt weight exceeds your ability to carry it. Your mind breaks. Depression, anxiety, suicide, or you have an accident, crash your truck, kill yourself and possibly others. The guilt becomes so heavy you can't function, can't make good decisions, can't drive safely. How do I unload? Forgive yourself. Actually forgive. Not just say the words. Actually accept that you're human, that you made mistakes, that you can't change the past, that carrying the guilt forever doesn't help anyone, that your brother wouldn't want you destroying yourself over his death, that your daughter forgave you for yelling, that one test doesn't define your worth, that one homeless man doesn't represent every charitable opportunity you'll ever have. I don't know how. Then you'll stay here. We have facilities for critically overloaded drivers. We'll help you unload, piece by piece, working through each guilt until you can. Release it. It takes time, weeks, months, sometimes years. But we'll get you light enough to drive again. I looked around the way station, saw other bays, other drivers sitting in chairs, all of them surrounded by translucent weight, all of them going through their guilt inventories with officers, some crying, some angry, some just sitting in silence, staring at the weight they'd been carrying. How many drivers are here? I asked. Currently, 47. Some have been here for months, working through decades of accumulated guilt. It's hard work, painful work, but necessary work. I spent 3 weeks at that way station, every day going through my guilt inventory, every day trying to forgive myself, trying to release the weight. It was the hardest 3 weeks of my life, facing every mistake, every failure, every regret, naming them, understanding them, forgiving them. Slowly, the weight decreased. 47,000 dropped when I finally accepted I couldn't have saved my brother. He made his choice to drink, his choice to drive. I was responsible for my choices, not his. Loving him didn't mean controlling him. His death wasn't my burden to carry forever. 8,000 dropped when I remembered my daughter had forgiven me within an hour. Children forgive easily, naturally. She didn't carry that moment forward, only I did. Why was I holding on to something she'd released years ago? One by one, the guilts dropped. The weight decreased. By the end of 3 weeks, I was down to 48,000 pounds. Still heavy, but manageable. Light enough to drive safely. The officer cleared me. You can go, but you'll need to check in regularly. Guilt accumulates, you'll pick up new weight. That's part of being human. But now you know how to recognize it, how to process it, how to release it before it becomes dangerous. Come back every 6 months. We'll weigh you. Make sure you're not accumulating critical levels. I left the way station, got back on Highway 287, continued my route. But I felt different, lighter, not just physically, mentally, emotionally. I'd been carrying 234,000 pounds without realizing it. Now I was under 50,000. The difference was incredible. I tell other drivers about it now, about the way station that measures guilt. Most don't believe me. Think I had a breakdown, needed therapy. Maybe they're right. Maybe the whole thing was a psychological intervention disguised as a way station. Maybe the officer was a therapist and the scale was metaphorical. Or maybe it was real. Maybe there really is a way station on Highway 287 that measures the invisible weight we all carry. The guilt we accumulate, the regrets we hold on to. And maybe that's the most important scale any driver can cross, because what good is staying under 80,000 pounds if you're carrying 300,000 pounds of guilt? What good is a safe vehicle if the driver is collapsing under the weight of their own conscience? I drive through that way station every 6 months now. Get weighed, check my guilt load, release anything new I've picked up. It's maintenance, like oil changes, like tire rotations necessary for safe operation. Last time I was at 43,000. I'm getting better at releasing, better at forgiving, better at not picking up every little guilt that crosses my path. But I see other drivers, overloaded, crushed under invisible weight they don't know they're carrying, driving dangerously because they're too heavy to operate safely. And I wish I could tell them, wish I could direct them to that way station. Wish I could help them unload before they collapse. But you can't force someone to recognize their guilt. Can't force them to forgive themselves. They have to find the way station on their own. Have to pull onto that scale voluntarily. Have to want to know what they're carrying. All I can do is keep myself light. Keep measuring. Keep releasing. Keep driving as safely as I can with the weight I choose to carry, because we all carry weight. We all have guilt. The question isn't whether you have it. The question is, how much are you carrying? And is it time to pull onto the scale and find out? Story 5. The passenger seat that showed your death. Every truck has a passenger seat. Mine shows me how I'm going to die. Different death every time I look at it. Always me. Always specific. Always terrifying. My name is Marcus Wright, 35 years old, driving for Prime Inc. The passenger seat started showing deaths 3 months ago. At first I thought I was hallucinating, seeing things, too many energy drinks, not enough sleep, standard trucker problems. But the visions were too detailed, too specific, too real. The first time I glanced at the passenger seat during a routine drive through Ohio. Instead of empty upholstery, I saw myself. Older, maybe 40 years old, slumped over, face gray, foam at my mouth. Dead from what looked like a heart attack. The vision lasted 3 seconds, then gone. Empty seat again. I pulled over, checked my heart. Pulse normal, breathing normal, no chest pain, no symptoms. I was fine. Just a weird visual artifact. Stress-induced hallucination. But 2 hours later, I looked again. Different death. Myself at 50, car accident. My truck jackknifed across the highway. My body visible through the shattered windshield. Neck broken, blood everywhere. Third glance. Myself at 65. In a hospital bed, tubes and machines, cancer maybe. Wasting away slowly. Eyes open but empty. Death by disease. Every time I looked at the passenger seat, I saw a different way I'd die. Different age, different cause, different circumstances, but always me, always dead, always specific. I stopped looking, kept my eyes on the road, tried to ignore the passenger side completely. But peripheral vision caught glimpses. Flash of myself hanging from a rope. Flash of myself in a fire, flash of myself underwater, lungs full of liquid. I covered the seat with a blanket. That helped. If I couldn't see the seat, I couldn't see the deaths. But I knew they were there, under the blanket, waiting, showing me every possible way my life could end. After a week, curiosity won. I pulled the blanket back, looked directly at the seat, forced myself to watch an entire vision instead of just catching glimpses. I was 72, old, in a nursing home, laying in bed, alone, no family visiting. Just me and a TV playing static. I watched myself die of loneliness. Watched the exact moment my heart gave up because I had nothing left to live for. Watched my last breath escape. Watched my eyes go empty. 3 minutes of detailed death. When the vision ended, I was shaking. That death was worse than the violent ones, worse than accidents or disease. Dying alone, unloved, forgotten. That was the real horror. I started paying attention, started analyzing the deaths, looking for patterns, looking for common factors, trying to understand what the passenger seat was showing me. After 50 different deaths, I realized they weren't predictions, they were possibilities. Every vision showed a potential future, a path my life could take based on current choices. The heart attack at 40 came from stress and poor diet. The car accident at 50 came from fatigue and reckless driving. The cancer at 65 came from smoking and ignoring symptoms. Each death was a warning, a consequence of specific choices. The passenger seat wasn't cursed. It was showing me the future cost of my present behavior, so I started changing. Quit smoking, started eating better, started exercising, started sleeping regular hours instead of pushing through fatigue. Started being more careful on the road, The deaths changed, became less frequent, less violent. Shifted toward older ages, I was altering the probabilities, making the bad deaths less likely, pushing the timeline toward better outcomes. But some deaths never changed. The loneliness death at 72 appeared regularly. No matter what I did, no matter how I changed my habits. That death remained constant because it wasn't based on physical health, it was based on relationships, on connection, on love. And I'd been avoiding those things for years, focusing on work,